Good afternoon. You have James Elliott here. We have also Paul Desmond. He is a leader and also one of the vision and design directors for Form Function Studio, and they are an architectural and interior design firm. I wanted to have Paul on my show today, and him and I think a lot alike, a lot about leadership, a lot about purpose, mission, passion, and fulfillment. So I want to have him on because I think you really enjoy hearing what he has to say in terms about leadership, your own leadership, even if you're not a leader or quote unquote not a leader, and then you finding your own passion and purpose. So welcome, Paul. It's great to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks, James. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And you, like me, able to work anywhere. I love how you're working when you have the corner of a cafe. It's really cool being able to work remotely anywhere you want. So that's really, really interesting. It's I want to be working from Spain or Italy in the winter, Costa Rica or wherever.
That would be amazing. We're not quite there yet, but slowly but surely we will be.
Exactly. Sooner or later, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking today about what happens when you take responsibility and this whole cause and effect thing. Talk to us, because you and I had a great conversation before at leading where you're at and not needing to be C-suite or CEO. So tell us more about this, in especially what happens at your firm as well, but even anything you've learned. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that first of all, please.
Yeah, James, it's been an interesting topic, and I think this really stemmed from my heart when COVID hit, and lives were uprooted, and lives were changed dramatically, lives were lost. But I think what COVID did was really put the finite reality of one's life into perspective. I would argue that this was probably generationally one of the craziest things that has happened in a really long time, not just in a country or a continent, but literally across the world. And I kind of go back to like World War II or Vietnam, this globally changing event that has happened. And it put into perspective for me of, as I'm trying to navigate a new studio, who's ultimately responsible for my purpose and my passion and my mission in this. And it truly just comes down to me, right? Or you. And I look at the landscape of the economy, especially in the US, and the drive towards wanting these benefits and wanting these desires and wanting this happiness, and looking at if someone else is more responsible than me for my happiness or my purpose or my passion, there's going to be a really big pitfall that's going to happen very soon.
And a rude awakening, I imagine, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's like we were saying, it's not cause and effect, but you add cause for everything in your life, good and bad, through your choices, your decisions, your actions, or your inactions. Or is it that blame game or victim mentality, or no, it's not me, it's them or that or he or she or the government or the economy or it's COVID or whatever. And that blame, yes, I believe anyways that crap happens to us in our life. Things happen, good and bad. But to your point, it's how do I take responsibility for what I want to have happen?
Correct. Yeah, and I think it's, excuse my language, it's in the subtle art of not giving a fuck, right?
Right. It's a good book.
And this idea of certainties in life, right? Certainties are of the past. Certainties of the future are so unknown. And we have a decision to make as humans in our lives of what certainty are we going to try to go after. And at what point do you either stop because you don't think you're going to hit that certainty, or you continue to plow through because you're so focused on desiring that certainty in life, whether that's financial certainty, relational certainty, spiritual certainty, whatever.
Mental, everything, emotional, physical, exactly.
Yeah, and it's just interesting of we're in this proposition in the world right now is I want more, whether it's financial, time, flexibility. I want more out of something or someone, but I want to do less. And that's just kind of my initial feeling in what's happening in this world of whether it's the 30-hour work week or, if I work for 32 hours and I finish my work, I should still get paid for 40. those are interesting conversations that need to happen.
Yeah,
um,
true.
that aren't happening, and the responsibility towards your growth lies within your leader, or lies within someone above you, where if I want to take responsibility for the future that I want to have, I actually need to care about it the most.
Fair. It's interesting you say that too, and because back when I was at IBM, I had a really great manager, Manny, and I had the conversation with him. It's like, hey, I can, for some reason, I can seem to get a lot of stuff done really quickly and faster than others can, and sometimes I'm just twiddling my thumbs, and if I can, I'll check in with emails and alerts and things like that, but can I, certain days I'm done my work and nothing else to do, and I made calls and mind if I take off a little? And she's like, yeah. She's like, don't stay if there's nothing. If you get your work done, you can get it done. You're more efficient, more effective than others. You're not, smoke break every half an hour or water cooler talk every whatever, and you can get things done more efficiently. She's like, yeah. She's like, don't stay. Avoid staying, and just for the purpose of staying, and to get your hours met. If you can get the same or even more done, she said, do something else. And my thoughts would be to work on yourself. And my suggestion would be, read a book or do some writing or journaling or take a course or something. Instead of just going home and watching TV, my thoughts would be do something to apply yourself and get you closer to what it is you want. But I really like what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And kudos to Manny. The challenge becomes, though, does work provide a space for your growth, right?
Yes.
You're only as strong as a company. You're only as strong as your weakest employee. But is that company either providing space for that employee to learn, but then also is that employee taking responsibility for the learning that it needs, or he or she needs, to grow? And so there's this kind of cause and effect, and we've talked about this idea of responsibility of whose is it, right? But if I need to go learn a skill set to get better at my job, is it my responsibility to talk to my direct report? Or is it my direct report or my boss responsibility to talk to me about it? And that's $1 million question, right?
Sure.
So as a vision and design director, if I have a vision for this firm and studio on growth, that's my responsibility, right?
Correct.
And if growth includes people growing, I would argue that's my responsibility too, to provide the space. But ultimately, it's the people's responsibility to grow themselves.
Sure.
If you give them the space.
And that's exactly it, our people. And I think that's why the Great Resignation's happening is well, for a number of reasons, but it's you're not given the space for what they need, especially the ones that are looking to grow, and that people don't just want to do a job and get a retirement and do whatever for the rest of their life. Someone that really wants to grow and have purpose and have a purposeful, fulfilling, meaningful, passionate career, life, you name it. I think that contributes. But tell us, what are your thoughts on why the Great Resignation is happening? What's really causing this?
I think we talked a little bit about it, right? This finite reality that we all have, right? It's we're in this kind of time clock, right? And it's all ticking towards our death, and there's a reality of that, and it's a scary reality for a lot of people, including myself. So I think there's something where that is happening if someone's working a job and they were working 50 to 60 hours a week before the pandemic hit, and then this reality happened of like, hey, my idea of harmonic or well-balanced, where a lot of people like to say well-balanced life, is not happening.
Yep.
This job is just a notch in the belt versus my identity, right? Because the pandemic took a lot of people's identity away.
True.
When they couldn't go to the office, right? Or they couldn't travel to do their sales. However, I think with this Great Resignation happening, it's people are looking for a quality of life that they haven't had before. And a lot of the generations before us weren't pursuing that quality of life. They looked at a job as a means to an end, rightfully so. And I think these next generations are going to be looking at a more purposeful or a values-based life that says, hey, how can I continue to believe that I'm making impact in the job that I have right now, while also living a balanced or harmonic life that I actually enjoy living now at 20 or 30 versus 60 and 70.
Exactly. Waiting. I mean, I think it was the statistic. It's either 8 or 18 months, but the average person dies 8 or 18 months after they retire. That sounds like it sucks.
It's insane.
Like it is insane. It's,
Yeah.
so what are we working our lives away for to have a retirement we can barely even spend? And meanwhile, some older people said to me, James, do what you want now. Travel, yes, save and be smart with the money, obviously, but travel now, because their thought was, okay, work, save, and then you can relax and enjoy and travel. But they're like, we didn't realize this. We can't travel to half the places we want to go to now because it's hiking or mountains or trails or whatever. And they're like, we did this wrong. We can't go to half the places we want to now. We can't do half the things we want to. So that was really interesting awakening too, listening to some older people that have done the save and wait type thing too. So to your point, I think people want quality of life now versus willing to endure a grind for the hope and the light at the end of the tunnel, which they may not ever see. So I think that you're right is causing the great resignation in companies, making you fit someone into a box, a tight, narrow box, where people want to be individual. They want to express themselves through their work, which I think is amazing and a very fulfilling thing. How can leaders prevent this great resignation? How can leaders stem the tide? I think you alluded to a bit of it, but tell us more about how you think it could be prevented.
So I think there's a couple things, and I only know from experience of the firms that I've worked for, and then the firm that I'm at right now, that I get to have a direct hand in managing and creating this culture, right? And so I do believe there's a few things of there's a contractual obligation that you and your employer have as an employee and your employer. Even if you're at an at-will state, it doesn't matter. There's this offer letter that both have signed, and there's an agreement based off of a financial agreement, based off of a time agreement, based off of a benefit agreement. And there's a lot of companies that bank on the employee giving 10 to 20 to maybe 25, 30% more time than what the contractual obligation has stated.
Fair.
And that's insane, right? And so we need to continue to focus on what was the contractual obligation and have clarity within that, because as a company, if you are not having margin based off of the contractual obligation you have with your people, that's not their fault. That's your fault.
There's a problem
right?
there, exactly.
I think you also have to provide space for growth and allowing your people to take responsibility for their growth as well. So way too many times companies keep people that were there for 5, 10, 15 years, but they've become an absolute cancer. And then they look at these young stars and they butt heads with this cancer and they let the stars go versus the cancer.
Fair.
And so I think there's this belief of longevity of just because I've been there for 15 years, I'm safe. So if I'm a complete asshole to the culture, I'm good. I'm profitable, right? And then the third is companies don't make their number one asset, their people, enough. And that's a massive issue.
Agreed.
And I don't know the statistic, but how much money like the turnover industry is, it's absolutely insane. Billions upon billions of dollars are spent because of turnover year in and year out. And instead of finding a way within your culture to allow people to stay and grow and prosper, and then maybe if they're not fitting within that exact seat on their bus or the boat or however your company wants to call it, is there another opportunity somewhere else for them to thrive?
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, hey, you're out. Or allowing them to think, well, they're not allowing me to grow. I'm out of here. and that becomes another issue.
Altogether. Yeah. It's interesting working for different corporations and now having my own business too, and just being able to talk to amazing people like yourself. It's interesting seeing, yes, some corporations and organizations, companies, governments, nonprofit, you name it, rewarding or having someone, well, they've been here for 5, 10, 15 years, so we gotta blank, or we can't blank. And you're right. Some people stagnate, and right, maybe they need a shift or a shakeup or a change, and they're comfortable and they do the thing, and it's comfortable and it's easy and it's safe. But maybe it's sometimes the responsibility of a company also to push and challenge that individual to grow. Otherwise, to your point, they become this cancer or this pulling down of people, and that bright new the bright new energetic talent, butts heads, and who is listened to or who wins. It's often the person with the most seniority, which sometimes translates to the most authority. When I mean, where are all the new ideas and the drive and the passion and the forwarding and furthering going to come from? It's usually the people, not always the new people, but the people with that drive and energy and passion, versus just because someone's been here for a long time. And the seniority thing, I agree with you with that as well. And I think fostering people's growth. And I think one of the biggest things is companies can take companies and individuals, the responsibility a company and organization can take is that responsibility for making sure everyone in the company grows, or at least providing opportunities for people to grow. And that can be very telling to see who takes advantage of the opportunities to grow, who does nothing with them, who has no interest in it, who has a fixed mindset, and who has a growth mindset. Because I feel, and feel free, I'd love your thoughts on this if I'm wrong, I think it's the people that have the growth mindset, the open mindset, that are going to further the company, not people with a fixed mindset, no interest in growing or changing or advancing or developing themselves. That's my thoughts. Am I wrong?
No, not at all. And I think there's this interesting proposition. It's, it's the whole 80-20 rule, right? 20% of a company creates 80% of the impact. And I'm actually really interested in this other 80% of people. Because I truly believe that we're all called to excellence, but not everyone's going to be a CEO.
Yes. True.
So people look at me crazy of, I expect more out of my entry-level designer as I do with my CFO and myself. I expect not necessarily more, but the same expectation is drawn with both of them, even though maybe the skill set and the future growth opportunities or the impact isn't always equitable, but the expectation is equitable. And I believe that companies, they don't make expectations equitable. They don't allow, or they don't keep sacred this idea of growth of where you're at. So I don't care if you're the third shift janitorial staff or the window washer, or you're on the line in a manufacturing company. There is a level of excellence that we have to continue to achieve. And it's the responsibility of the company to define that lane and create that scorecard. But then it's also the expectation and responsibility of that person to know that and understand it and pursue it.
I think that's a great perspective. And one of the sayings I've heard is that true leadership, is taking responsibility for something that you really want to have completed, even if it's something in the company. Have a specialty role or be a champion for something. If you want something done or changed, take responsibility for what you want to have, what outcome you want, and also take responsibility for what you're not normally seen to be responsible for. That is one of the definitions of true leadership, which I think is a really cool one. It's again all about our theme today of taking responsibility and taking it on. Like, I'm at cause. I want this. How can I create it, versus complaining or the water cooler talk or the victim mentality or I'm purposeless, I'm useless, I'm powerless, which is a lie anyways. We're all powerful. We can all create all kinds of amazing things. We can all be very effective, and even one person can make an enormous change. I mean, you ever been stuck in a bedroom with one friggin' mosquito? You realize how we're actually not that small and insignificant if you've ever been kept up all night by one damn mosquito. So we can make a big change, a big impact.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, James, you brought it up, like this idea of responsibility and whose is it, right? And ultimately it is ourselves. And I think we're at this really critical point in history right now where we've experienced over the past 50 or 60 years innovation in arguably every single industry known to man, right? And so I look at it as my fiance's in healthcare, and there's this idea that the doctor cares more about your health than you do, right? And there's this desire for a fix through a medication, and arguably sometimes like you need that medication, but there's this idea of preventative healthcare that happens of where are we being proactive and preventative on the effect towards our health. But now it goes down to this professional idea of where are we being proactive? And if your boss or your company cares more about the impact that you are making or the responsibility that you have to the company more than you have for their company or your growth, that's where it gets into issues right now. And there's not this quick fix, but the quick fix is happening right now in the Great Resignation.
People are paying attention.
Correct. Yep. So company's not taking responsibility, but then also the person's not taking responsibility. So then there has to be this massive change. And the Great Resignation is happening even faster because you have people applying to architecture firms that are getting $7,000 to $10,000 signing bonuses, and they're probably arguably getting a salary that's inflated by 15 to 25%. But what does that say to the people working there still? Where was their $7,000 to $10,000 keeping bonus or staying with us bonus? And it's like, well, if I'm not going to feel appreciated here, or if I'm not going to allow myself to grow because you guys aren't allowing me, like I'm going to take responsibility and go find another job where I can go get rewarded for it.
Exactly. I think that's why this tide of people leaving is happening. People want flexibility and freedom, and companies for some reason are so afraid of giving it to them. They think everyone's just going to mess around and not do their work. And sure, some people will, 80-20 rule, right? I mean, I think some people will, but also, you monitor people, you have metrics. Are they getting their work done? Are they doing the work? Are they hitting the numbers? And are they achieving results? Then great. Be flexible for them. I think that's one of the biggest currencies, I suppose, that the companies now have is to reward people. I mean, money is great, but I mean, there's diminishing returns with money, but the flexibility, freedom, I don't know, working 4 days a week in the summer or whatever, giving them longer vacation, I believe wholeheartedly in rest. And a lot of people are not performing very well because they're not resting enough. So a year, 2-3 weeks in an entire year, that's all you have off. That's got to go. And I when I've talked to companies and they've tested, like, all right, James, we're going to try this. We don't know. Giving people more vacation time, more rest, and almost forced them to take it as well and been strategic about it. The results skyrocket. Results have gone up. People have gotten, and I'm living proof too. I burn myself out. I work all the time. Stuff doesn't work. Whereas I rest and I come back stronger, more creative, more effective. The conversations I have are better. I'm more purposeful and driven forward. I'm more energetic, and I want to be there. And without rest, I think so again, I think flexibility and allowing for growth, like you mentioned too, personal development, growth, whether it's highly recommended by the company or the employees want it as well. It's finding different ways, I think, for helping people grow as well is priceless. And you don't have to only pay them more money, or you don't have to only use more money as a motivator, because that's not a great leadership. When I worked, I worked at a company called Platespin, was bought out by a few companies, bought out by Novell, and then IQ. Hugh, I had an amazing manager, Hugh, and he's the reason I stayed there, despite recruiters offering me more money, more pay, more vacation, more of this, more of that. And he was one of the biggest reasons I stayed. Amazing leader. And I went above and beyond in what I did for him because he was such an amazing leader. I think instead of trying to ring people out, or having a grind house where well, actually, we want you to do 30% more than is in your job offer. That, I think, motivates people and wants people to run like hell. If you inspire and motivate people, and that's what I do. I teach people how to do that, teach leaders how to do that, and how to be kick-ass leaders, so that people will automatically give their best and go above and beyond, and stick around during hard times, follow them into battle, whatever metaphor you want to use. It's really interesting to see that, and from experience, again, leadership, flexibility, trusting people, and not micromanaging people, I think goes a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting you talk about this idea of flexibility, and I believe in it. We've drawn a line in the sand that's probably going against the grain right now of, we're in studio. However, you aren't working more than the 40 to 45 hours that we've contractually agreed to with you. And within that, we're providing this idea of, like, if you get sick, it happens. Like, I'm not going to have you take PTO. Just make those hours up over the next couple of weeks. It doesn't matter to me, right? It's actually going to show, and architecture is a little bit of a different industry, but it's actually going to show if you're not doing the work, right? And then, sorry, we're in this cafe and someone's like going to town on this kitchen right now.
What are they doing with their coffee?
I don't know, man. They're like 60 feet away too, so I do apologize. But that's life, I guess. But we're having these conversations within the studio, and we call it the weekly goal sheet, and we call it this 20% rule. Of the 40 to 45 hours that you work within Form Function Studio, you are obligated and responsible to take 8 to 9 hours of your day, or your week, towards personal and professional development.
I love it.
Towards the studio. So whether you want to learn a new subject, or you want to research a new technology, or you want to work on kind of our standards on how we operate, whatever those big rocks are that help grow our studio and grow you, I don't care. But I do care when we look at the timesheet and we talk about it at the end of the week, and it's like, hey, why did you only work on professional growth for 5 hours? What did you do for those other 3? Like, where is the responsibility? Because I have a responsibility to you of making sure that space is being defined and fulfilled, but then you have the responsibility to actually go grow.
Right.
And the idea is that as a company, yes, we're driven by, like, you can't have a mission without margin, right? And that's critically important, especially if you're in the for-profit space.
Yeah.
However, and I said it earlier, if your for-profit margin is defined based off of going over a contractual obligation for your employees, you should not be in the for-profit space. You should actually not be a company. It's completely unfair and ludicrous to be able to expect someone to do that.
Fair.
And so we go through this process in this time, and we set up as a company, like, hey, we have the X amount of hours to make money. We have X amount of hours to grow professionally. And the hope is that as we all continue to grow professionally along this line, our efficiencies go up.
True.
Right? And so that allows us even more time to do the things that we want to do versus the things that we have to do.
Right.
And then we can continue to live this kind of meaningful life, and more vacation and more time off, or more personal growth, and more of a harmonic life. But it's truly a company's responsibility to say, hey, if my employee is getting this job done in 30 hours and we're contractually obligated for 40, what can we do? But then it's also the employees of, hey, maybe I can go continue to learn something, or maybe I can go continue to grow, or take responsibility for something, instead of being within just this job. Because I truly believe, and maybe this is just this far-fetched idea, that we're all called to some sort of excellence
I agree.
every year, right? And so if we're not pursuing that, what are we actually pursuing?
Fair. Yeah. Purpose, mission, excellence. I agree. Where we're called towards it. And I think that's why a lot of lack of fulfillment, lack of passion, lack of love, and all our vices, sex, drugs, rock and roll, booze, gambling, excess TV, whatever else I've missed. That's why it happens. It's a way to numb the pain or avoid thinking about it. So I agree.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have you back on again. This has been amazing. This has been amazing.
Thanks,
Paul.
James.
A pleasure. So tell us more. Form Function Studio. What do you guys do? How can people reach you? I put it up here down below on the bold line too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we're a design and an architectural interior design studio in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Our breadth of work goes as far east as West Virginia, and then as far west as Utah right now. And we're a firm of 5, but we really focus on this vision of elevating the everyday. And we love taking on projects that really focus in on whether it's a residential project for family respite or shaping the way a family wants their lives versus has their lives, or working with companies that are privately owned, they're family businesses, and they have this opportunity to 4x, 8x, 10x their growth with this new building or this renovation. And we really love rolling up our sleeves and designing for that elevation, and then allowing them to reach their goals through architecture and design. And so being in Little Iowa, we're really been blessed with this work within the commercial space of industrial companies, where you have this dichotomy of the white collar and the blue collar, right, within that manufacturing company. And then how do you meld a culture through architecture and design and spaces where everyone feels appreciated and everyone feels like they're this important piece to the machine. And then within the residential, really focusing on Iowa's not known for the residential architecture, and so we really want to give them the unexpected of these really just simple forms and elevated spaces, quality of life. You don't necessarily need more space to live a quality of life, but really design spaces for the generations versus just as a commodity for the next 10 years. So we're mission-based, we're spiritually based. We have a ton of fun doing it. We just passed the 3-year mark. So really excited about, thank you, really excited about the opportunities that we have in front of us, but really excited about what the future holds and the responsibility that we have of making this world a better place, not only for humans, but also for our environment.
I agree on that one too. I've seen a lot, in my 41, almost 42 years, I've seen a lot of the environment, a lot of change, and even my dad said we've noticed a lot. So yes, we better do some big changes quick. Otherwise, we may be out of luck, or our kids may be out of luck, or my nieces and nephews maybe. So I agree, brother. I agree. I got to have you back on. This has been an amazing chat. Thank you very much for being here. Everyone, info at formfunctionstudio.com or formfunctionstudio.com if you want to visit them online. This has been amazing. Paul, thank you very much for your time and for helping me do what I love.
Yeah, thanks, James. I really appreciate the time. This was a blast.